Yes, I'm recording.
Okay,
I'll
perfect.
put it on pause.
All right, thank you.
Hey, Priscilla, you're downtown. There you go.
I'm in town, yeah.
That's good.
I had a
Right.
library meeting and so now I'm here.
Okay, great. All right. So it's 7:30. I think we've got a full board and we have some visitors. Welcome. We have a full agenda. Hi, Janet. Yeah, and so I'll start the meeting at the posted time. First thing is approval of the minutes of the 21st of March. Is there a motion to approve?
I make the motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second,
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
aye.
Thank you, Jane. Next, we have communications and announcements. One announcement, Cornwall Housing Corporation has put out a fundraising letter highlighting the need for housing in town. And I thought it was a good letter, and I would ask everybody to read it and support it. We will be following up. We had a good meeting of the Housing Task Force last night. There's quite a few housing initiatives underway, and I know I met with some people from the Housing Corporation this morning about developing some of the lots that they have on Dark Entry Road and on Town Street. So hopefully that will get underway this spring. And again, thanks people that volunteering their time for dealing with that important issue. Are there any other communications, announcements, any additions to the agenda? Okay, hearing no additions, we'll go right into our first topic of fiber optics. And again, the cable companies are out and about. And Optimum is continuing to wire the town. I had a interesting meeting last week with representatives from Frontier Corporation, who are also planning to start wiring Cornwall. And I have a slide packet that I sent to the board, and we'll put that up on the website, I think, just to tell people what's happening with that alternative. It is similar, but different in some substantial ways from what Optimum is doing. They are, and again, what they're offering is different. They are wiring the whole state of Connecticut, as opposed to only a portion of it, as Optimum only has a part of Connecticut. Frontier plans to have a fiber network in each town in Connecticut. They plan to have ours in place, start wiring this summer and have it usable probably this fall. Some of the important differences that they're talking about. One, probably the biggest difference is that they are not going to be wiring the entire town to start. They are going to do the village centers and the roads that have the most customers on it. They're not required by the state to wire everybody. And they also do have a building in town which will serve as their hub, which is on Cemetery Hill, a little ways down from the cemetery, which is the original phone building. Of interest to the technical people is that they say that their system is symmetrical, that their upload speeds are the same as their download speeds, which they claim some other providers have a better, are not symmetrical and have a better download speed than an upload speed. What also is interesting with their proposal is that they're not power dependent. That as long as they have a generator at their headquarters, which is already built in town, and as long as people have power at their houses to run their equipment, they will, in theory, have powers even when the normal power goes out. So that is something to consider and explore. The system may be, in that way, maybe more resilient than the other fiber optic system. But overall, I was very glad and welcome them to town. I think it's very good to have competition and not just have one provider. And again, we will publicize both companies' information to try to let consumers make an informed choice as this unfolds. But this is a different situation than we thought we were going to be in several years ago, when we didn't know if fiber would come to town and when it would come to town. They are going to submit to the town a proposal for wiring the rest of the town, which will probably be fairly substantial. They did not release their maps of what areas are going to ultimately be covered, but most of the center part of town will be covered. The village centers will be covered. There will be some areas that they will not do initially, especially out in the corners of the town where there's less people. And that's essentially it. They were very forthcoming as far as their contact people, their engineers people. So I give them high marks for that as far as being available, putting contact information out there. A little disappointed that they're not going to be covering everywhere in town, but they said that is their business model. Frontier did go into bankruptcy several years ago. They have now come out of bankruptcy, and this is part of their business plan going forward, is to get out of the copper business and into the fiber business. So they are also a multi-state corporation, but they find actually the density of people in Connecticut is higher than in other states, so they are concentrating on Connecticut. So did the board get the packet? Did you have any questions about what they're doing? So, and again, I think we'll get as these systems come online, we'll do more of a public outreach program to let people know what's going on and try to get people's questions answered, because there will be apparently more than one game in town, which I think overall is healthy. Okay, next we have Hammond Beach plans, which were submitted by Beach Director Marina Kochebe. I just found my minutes going back to Frontier. I think that's basically it. One other thing they did offer, which was significant, was that they were going to have a hookup fee to houses for $50 regardless of length of driveway, as long as there's existing conduit to the houses. That is one question we have had in the past. And another important thing was they have no they have no plans at this point to turn this network into a 5G mobile network. So that's another consideration that's out there. So then we have a report from Beach Director Marina Kochebe. Summer plans. Did the board receive that?
Yes.
Are there any questions? Marina couldn't make it tonight, but she said if the board had any questions, feel free to call her. We are advertising for lifeguards, and there have been some applications already received for lifeguards and people expressing an interest in being water safety instructors, head lifeguards. Again, we will advertise the staffing positions. So, and I believe Marina's working on Park and Rec with some events, starting with the townwide picnic in June. So are there any questions about the beach?
Yes. I have a question.
Okay,
So will the head guard be overseeing the lifeguards? Who will be overseeing scheduling the lifeguard?
I think Marina will make the schedule and set the schedule. And then the head guard will be overseeing the operations. Obviously, the head lifeguard will not be there all 7 days, but Marina will work that out with the head lifeguard, but there will be some delegation of duties to the head lifeguard.
Okay. How many days will Marina be there?
I think she'll be there most days. If not during the actual time the beach is open, she may go down there early to see how things are doing, but I believe she plans to be there most days. And she will be available by phone if there are any issues.
What's the role of the water safety instructor then between the head guard and Marina, the director?
I believe the water safety instructor will be giving swim lessons. Again, the program has shrunk somewhat during COVID, and we're trying to bring it back. Other towns are also trying to ramp up their programs by giving swim lessons. There is some interest. The other role historically the WSI has done was to organize a swim team. There is no league anymore because there's been a period of years where there's been no formalized swim team, but they hope, I believe, to talk to other towns to get some informal meets going if there is an interest of Cornwall kids and enough kids to form something. Excuse me.
Will Marina and the WSI be taking?
Yeah, excuse me. So what was the question, Jan?
Will Marina and the WSI be taking shifts?
I don't believe Marina will act as a lifeguard or a water safety instructor. She will be more managing schedules and making sure we have a complete roster of people there. I think she can fill in if, I believe she's certified if we have a shortage, but I don't think she's planning, she's trying to fill it with other people as guards. Any other questions? And I said she's she's available if anybody wants to chat. We do have the beach pass, beach rules. Some question whether we keep all the fees the same. I would think we could. And are there any questions on any of the rules? We don't have to decide everything now, but people are starting to ask for beach passes. So I would make a motion that we keep the rates the same as last year, at least get that done, and that we offer a free pass to town board members and people on the fire and ambulance squads, which we've done in the past. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any other questions, comments about the beach? And we can, as I will update people as time goes on.
What's the process for head guard applications?
I believe those will be, I think all the applications are coming into the selectman's office, and then Marina will interview the people that have the qualifications, see what their resumes are, see what their experiences are, see what their references are, and she will basically see how that fits.
And she's reaching out to past guards?
Yeah, I believe we're going to contact people that have worked in the past and tell that that applications are being received for the positions. So as we go, as we post these. Any other questions about the beach? Comments? Okay, so hearing no more questions, we'll go into road sealing projects. Jim has been working with Seymour Sealing, who we've used in the past and has the lowest rates for state bid for road sealing. Looking at roads that would be done in May. There are some that have not been done in a while in the northeastern part of town, the upper part of Town Street, the very end from Yelping Hill to the dirt section, Yelping Hill Road itself, and Scoville Road is what he's proposing to do this spring. We have funds to do that amount, about $50,000. We also are looking at doing some summer sealing, which would be Hot Boy and Hobart Place, as well as some roads in the southeastern part of town. And also he's looking at trying to go out to bid for some paving on Popple Swamp, South Road, and Everest Hill Road, which some of those may need to be ground up. And he's looking to put a bridge deck on a bridge on Popple Swamp Road. So sort of covering a few parts of town there. In our rotation, we try to move through, so we pave or seal roads every 5 years to keep them from cracking up. So I would make a motion then to authorize Jim to organize the work with Seymour Sealing on Town Street, Yelping Hill, Scoville Road to get resurfaced with a chip seal surface this May. There's a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Next, you can see the trip grant. We put that together with the assistance of WMC engineers. After our tour of West Cornwall and Cornwall Bridge. Again, this is to put in sidewalks, crosswalks in Cornwall Bridge and West Cornwall, as well as do some parking improvements. And a lot of these have been called for in the town plan. So the COG will vote to send these on, hopefully this week at their meeting. The estimated cost of this is $868,000, which is a big number, higher than I thought, but a lot of the actual construction costs are about half of that. And the rest of it is for contingencies and some construction, mobilization, incidentals, and some price escalation, thinking that this may take 2 or 3 years to accomplish. So this may be a larger number than what the project ultimately costs, but part of the project is if the project goes over budget, then the town has to pay the overage. So are there any questions about this? And again, it's a competitive grant. No idea whether the town will get it, but at least we will put our name forward as a participant and we'll see what happens. And we will have the ability, we'll have to go to a town meeting to authorize money if we get this, because it's a reimbursement grant and we will have tighter numbers then and be able to take people's questions about what we're doing at that time. Any other comments about the TRIPS grant? Okay. Next, Housatonic Railroad Spraying. Had an interesting conversation with Parker Rodriguez from the railroad, who is their general counsel. And it was a very interesting conversation. I hadn't talked to anybody from the railroad in quite a while. And he informed me that they had received our letters in years past, and did say that they have cut back their spraying of the tracks, and that was acknowledged in their letter that they actually sent in 2021, which I uncovered a copy of. And it's my impression that they have sprayed less in the last 2 years. He said they have done some fairly expensive trimming as opposed to spraying in West Cornwall. In Cornwall and Cornwall Bridge areas, they're trying not to spray the sides of the track in the populated areas. They do not acknowledge the no spray zones per se, but they are acknowledging them in practice. So I said I thought that was progress and that we have been pushing for less spray and more trimming for years, and this is the first time, to give them credit, that I think we're coming together for a discussion on what that actually means. He had a long segment about how it's necessary to spray the rail bed itself because it's impractical to mow where there's gravel and the rail ties. It is possible to mow the sides of the rail bed, but not the rail bed itself because it's metal and rock. I would agree with that. That would be tricky. And I think that if they do continue to not spray the sides, that's really where we've had the big problems with the dead trees, which again, they can test why the trees died, but that seems to be where we have our differences of opinion. I have talked to Maria Horn about getting a meeting together, and I will talk to Mr. Rodriguez to see whether he would participate in a Zoom call with state officials and local officials, maybe several from each town, and continue to talk about issues with the railroad. I do think there is issues beyond spraying that we should also be concerned about. And I did tell them that I have supported the railroad's application to the state for funding to upgrade the rails and the tie, and basically put in more, upgrade the ties. I think it's in everybody's interest to make sure that the railroad operates as safely as possible and stays on track and does not have a derailment, which we've seen how that can turn a town into a very bad place very quickly. I don't believe they're hauling anywhere near the amount of toxic rail cars that we saw in Ohio, but again, it's a startling reminder of what is possible if rails are not maintained. He did say they take, what was it, over 1 million tons of freight off the highway systems. And I said, I appreciate that. And also the question, so I think we have at least 3 things to talk about: is rail safety, conditions of the tracks, safety improvements, spraying, to find out exactly what they are spraying, where they're mowing, what standards they're using. He was fairly adamant that the state did not have much say in the regulation of the railroad, that they are regulated by federal authorities. So that'll be an interesting topic. And hazard trees. So I do want to talk, we did get today a 70-page report from the local group that's concerned about spraying. So I want to read that before I respond to him, but it's my thought to request a meeting with Representative Horn's help to get the municipal officials together, along with state officials and the railroad in one meeting, so we can begin to talk about some of the issues surrounding the railroads, and we're not just talking to in a vacuum and sending off letters that don't get answered, or there's no dialogue. I think dialogue is very important, even though we may not always agree on everything. I think there is some common interests there. So that's my activity report. Any thoughts? So what I'm suggesting going forward is that we as a board read the information we just got today from our group that's concerned, and that we pursue a meeting, in the fairly near future with state officials and railroad officials and local officials. So any thoughts on that way to proceed?
Well, as one who lives along the railroad track, I will give them credit for slowing down, at least when they come into West Cornwall. I'm very aware that in the last few weeks, they seem to be more attentive about slowing down, and I appreciate it as a neighbor.
Great. Glad to hear that. Janet, any thoughts, comments?
Yeah, I wonder if there's an opportunity to better partner with the railroad, because I've personally gone out and weed whacked, which I have no issue doing. It's not a threat to myself, or it's not a problem at all. I'm happy to do it. So if the people along the tracks are willing to partner with the railroad to eliminate the weeds on the side and in the tracks, I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for them not to spray then.
Yep, good question.
Well, we have to step up too. I get that. We can't expect them, I don't know. I don't see how dandelions are endangering the train, but perhaps I'm missing something. I think that we have to take a responsibility for helping keep the track cleared. But they have asserted that they have the right to spray 10 to 20 feet outside of the center of the rail bed, which is spraying our wells. And that's not acceptable. And it shouldn't be acceptable to anybody, because that's not really, they're bringing on something that causes cancer in a non-threatening situation. So I think there needs to be a better partnership on this.
Okay. So we'll proceed, try to get a meeting together, see what we can do.
I'd be happy to demonstrate how we can actually do it.
Yeah, I think, yeah. What Mr. Rodriguez did say that he felt that that in effect, the rail bed had to be a dead zone because any living plants there would increase moisture content and rot of the cross ties. So that is the anti-mow around the tracks argument. I'm not saying I agree with it, but that's the answer, that the vegetation, even if it's mowed, will come back unless if there's vegetation there, and it will trap moisture and thereby rot the wooden ballast. So
I
anyway.
think that there's other alternatives that can be uncovered other than cancer causing spraying. And they have to take that in consideration.
Okay, any other comments? Yeah, so we'll keep this as an agenda item. And again, I was glad to hear that it is a policy apparently to not spray outside the bed itself. So that is a big change. Compost permit application. I did visit the transfer station last week, and Ted and Will have come up with a new site for our compost demonstration project, which is to the left of the bulky waste containers up on the hill a little bit. It would satisfy the requirement of getting the compost pile more than 100 feet away from a water source. And that, and I think that will help. So we are looking at getting a new map together and reapplying with some of the details and with a new site within a week back to the state and try to meet their concerns. So we're still going with that. The problem's going to be, as if this becomes a 3-month process, we're going to be out of sync with the collection of leaves fairly soon. But it may be that we start this up full tilt in the fall when we get leaves, unless we can find a similar product to compost with. And apparently they're pushing this as part of the leaf compost program. But in a way, I think this does coincide with a lot of the work that's being done with the compost symposium later this month, in that encouraging people to do things at home as the first step. So anyway, we're working as quickly as we can to set something up at the transfer station, but it may take a while. But we'll try to get our permits squared away as soon as possible. Any other thoughts about compost? Let's see. West Cornwall wastewater project. Borings were done at the site between the Three Guys shop and the post office. And I think they went down 20 feet, hit water at 13. Found a few rocks to let you know we're in Cornwall, but not ledge, which is encouraging. And Steve McDonald, the engineer, felt that that showed that they could dig and put tanks and whatever they need to do, they could work that site. So I have been in touch. Eric Tietz and his wife Helen have purchased that building in the bookstore from William Betts, and Eric and Helen are open to having the town continue to look at that site as a solution to the problems in West Cornwall for wastewater. So so that's good. And of course, the bookstore is without well or septic, so that's as much as anyone, any place demonstrates a need to move ahead. So they're receptive to that. The next big step is Steve McDonald has gotten a proposal, which he's accepted from Eagle Engineering from Thomaston to do the environmental report, which is required by the federal government before anything else happens. So that should happen within 2 months' time. And then after we receive the environmental report, Steve can start the design portion of the project. This project committee will meet next Tuesday as a regular meeting, so we'll be able to update those aspects with Steve. So I think we have made some progress this last while on getting things going for the spring. Any questions, concerns about that? But the information about the meeting should be posted on the website ahead of that if people want to find out the Zoom link. And again, that's next Tuesday at 5 o'clock. Budget 23-24.
Hang on, Gordon, just a second.
Yeah.
Do we need to approve the engineering, the environmental cost?
That's all part of Steve's package, so that comes out of his fee. So
Okay.
we can approve it, we can endorse it or whatever, but he's in charge of overseeing it, and it's coming out of his fee. So I think we're pretty good on that. I'm glad it
That's
wasn't
fine.
more, and he's worked with it, so I think we're good on that. Okay,
Okay.
but good question.
Thank you. Yep.
Yep. The upcoming budget will have a hearing April 21st, which I believe is a Friday night, 7:30 p.m. at CCS. Joe Pryor, the chair of the Board of Finance, and I met with the school board to look at their capital projects, of which they have some significant ones as far as rewiring some of the internet service at the school. There are some roofing issues, some carpet issues, some heating plant issues. We did increase the capital funding for school projects in next year's budget, and we're confident after that meeting that the amount of money allocated should meet that, start being able to address some of those outstanding issues. The Board of Finance is meeting Thursday night at 7 o'clock for those fans of finance to work on finalizing a budget for the coming year. Again, it's coming together, I think, pretty well. And so the more details follow on that. One item that has come up that we have been working on that may or may not be in that budget, that Jane and I met today with the town's insurance company, Kerma, who are offering us a 3-month package on, or 3-year package on insurance for liability, auto, property, as well as workers' comp, to cap the increases. And actually this, because that's a municipal pool, next year's rates will be almost the same as this year's rates, which are much better than numbers we get out of healthcare. And one thing we have been working on that we haven't executed yet is cybersecurity insurance. We have taken steps in town hall with our IT person, Greg Dale, to harden our systems, and we are now have completed the checklist that is required to be eligible for cyber insurance. So we will, with Kerma's help, solicit some proposals to get the town cyber insurance, and this would cover the town's losses, or at least curtail some of the losses, and get us, I think importantly, technical expertise if the town does get hacked, as other towns have been in Connecticut. He said currently about half the towns have experienced that, some towns repeatedly. So I think it's a wise move to get something in place there. And again, we have taken some steps to make it less likely and less vulnerable for the town to be vulnerable to that. But I still think, considering what some of the exposures are, it'd be good to at least entertain some insurance proposals. We found what's interesting, because it is such a competitive and growing market, that he suggests that we get a policy that doesn't necessarily fall on the town's budget year, which starts on July 1st. He would say start on June 1st, get a 13-month policy to start, and then renew in June, because a lot of times the companies will apparently are less likely to quote a policy for July 1st, because that's when a lot of their business revolves around. So he said going either side of that made some sense. So if we can get a quote earlier, we'll get a quote earlier and bring that back to the board. Of course, this is not in our budget for this year, but we have a healthy contingency fund for such events, and I would say we should put that in there. And if we can pre-buy our insurance for the balance for next year, we should do that too. So, but that's still a work in progress. Any other thoughts on the budget, cybersecurity? Plenty to do. Grant request, we got 2 grant requests for our bottle fund. These are from for organizations that have received before. One is for the Housatonic Camera Club. Second one is for multiple sclerosis fundraiser. I think these are both worthy causes. However, we have we don't have grant requests. The money, modest as it is, goes back to the general fund. So I believe there's roughly $100 in the fund right now. Both of these requests are $1,000, which we should generate in about a month's time. Ted and Will sort out bottles and cans, as we know, and get then the town trucks them down and we get those redeemed. Money goes into the general fund, and as the Board of Selectmen votes to grant it to a worthy endeavor. So I would make a motion that we grant a grant to the Housatonic Camera Club and Jennifer Larson's for the MS Walk. Is there a second of that motion for discussion?
Second.
And I think Barbara has given you a list of the, I believe, $14,000 worth of grants that we've granted based on redeeming bottles. Any more discussion on these things?
So we don't actually have the money right now.
The money would be going forward, yes. No, the money has to be redeemed, so there is no money there. So we would be allocating this ahead of getting the money. That's the understanding. Until we get the money in the account, then there's no money to make these grants.
Is that going to coincide with the MS Walk then?
I'm not sure. Well, there's a walk on May 21st. That might be after it. I can't predict how quickly the money will come in. So any further thoughts? All those in favor? Aye.
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 So let's see, then we have a tax refund requests. So we have believe we have one for $5,059, one for $594, one for $144, all for overpayment of the real estate taxes. So I make a motion that we grant these tax refund request as authorized by our most capable tax collector. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that brings to public comment. We have a good audience tonight, so let's see. So anybody has a comment, question? I see Michelle with a hand up. I see hands are going up. Yes, Michelle.
Hi, how are you tonight?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Just want to update on some Park and Rec events coming up for April. Start off first with a thank you to all the families who came out for our rainy April Fool's spring celebration on Saturday. We had a really great time and we really appreciate people coming out to be out there with us. So on to what we have coming up for April. We have our community lunch on Tuesday, which is April 11th. And that'll be at the Parish House. If you are interested in coming, you need to RSVP, and that's to park.recreation@cornwallct.gov. Or you can text or call Jen Marco with your RSVP. And we do want to encourage people, it's not just whatever you define as senior, but it is open to the community in Cornwall. So second Tuesday of each month at noon, we are at the Parish House at UCC, so just RSVP. And we've actually started making the meals ourselves. Jen Marco, myself, and Melissa Bronson have started making the meals. So it's been a really fun adventure. We encourage you all to come out with us. And we've started another event called Social Hour. On the third Wednesday of each month, we'll be gathering. The location's going to rotate based upon weather. This month, we'd like to do it at Town Hall. And it's Wednesday afternoons from 3 to 4. You don't need to RSVP, just drop in. We have little snacks, beverages. As the summer goes on, we may have mocktails and other fun things. But it's just an hour to get together, chat with your neighbors, and catch up. So those are our two upcoming events. So hope to see lots of community out and meeting and greeting with their neighbors.
Great. Well, I appreciate your efforts to get people together. Seems like spring is finally here. So it's nice to have a few events to get together with. Any other comments, questions? Yes, Nancy. I think you're still muted.
She's still muted.
Okay, I think
There we
that's it. I have several. One is about the general fund. Or about the bottle fund. Has that fund always been placed in the general fund? And when was the last time a grant was approved from that fund?
Okay, I do have the answers.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and we can actually get you a thing. Let's see. We have, let's see, in yeah, since it started, what I have, the record here is that 2015, there were 2 grants, one to Cornwall Goshen Pack 15, $1,000, another one for CCS 8th grade, $800 following year, also CCS, also Cub Scouts, then in 2016 also returnables, and also in those days I think a lot of the organizations actually transported the bottles to the redemption place, because Hunt Williams had a grant for the All Saints for canning and jam making for the All Saints charity jam making group. The Cub Scouts also did get 2 grants that year, and they did transport, I believe, the bottles. The United Church of Christ did some things for its Remember organization. In 2017, Cornwall Library got some grants to benefit children's programs. 2019, 2020, 21, 22, the National Multiple Sclerosis Society got grants. The Women's Society UCC got a grant in 2020, and Housatonic Camera Club got a grant in 2021 for $1,000. So the total grants are given were $14,000
Okay, that's,
over that period of time.
thank you. I just wondered, it doesn't have its own line. It goes into the general fund and you just keep track of what goes in there.
It has its own fund, but if there are no pending applications, then the money gets put into the
I
general
see.
fund
Okay,
per the accountant. So this was all run according to accounting
okay,
standards.
thank you.
Okay,
I have another comment, and this is about Hammond Beach, which I have a particular interest in it because I live next door, which is wonderful. I love living next door and hearing all the happy kids' voices playing Marco Polo in the summer, etc. Not much better than that, but I'm wondering if it would be possible, might it be possible for us to use a couple of our park and rec members to be like a committee, a support committee for Marina when problems arise, just to have several people, and especially from Park and Rec, involved in that. One of the things that this summer disturbed me was the guest fee, which I know we need to have a guest fee. It's appropriate to have a guest fee, but we had an incident where we had a family come. The young father had grown up in Cornwall and was visiting his family from out of state, and he had quite a few kids, and it was going to be $70 or $80 per day for his family. So they didn't get to swim there. Is there some way we can have a family pass amount so that a maximum, like, $20 a day? I don't know what our insurance company, but you brought up our insurance, whether we need a rider or we need to ask a certain amount of money to comply with our insurance company. But it just seemed to me that there must be a way to solve this because we never have an overcrowded beach. It would be great to have a good crowd on the beach. But what would you think about some towns do have a beach committee or a waterfront committee to support their beach director?
yeah, I think that's a great idea, and I have this week suggested that, as I think I said earlier, that Marina contact Michelle
Good.
and Jen and to try to coordinate it. So again, we're trying to, I think we did a pretty good job surviving COVID and actually keeping the beach open when other towns actually closed their beach.
Yeah.
But we're sort of a little bit still in recovery, but I think having a support group or and especially having the structure of Park and Rec already in place would be a good
Yeah.
thing. So no, I'm all in favor of that, and I will share that concept because especially if there are people that want to be involved, I think that's a good active group. So, and it already has some authority, by virtue of what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Thank you.
I think that's all good. And again, I don't have it here, but yeah, I think we could look at that for a maximum. Yeah, I think we could look at a maximum visitor thing. I think overall our beach rates are at $20 for a resident are a fraction of what other towns charge. So
It is a deal.
we're-
I agree with that.
we
That's a
we are
deal.
not, and having gone so many in other places, even whatever it is, winds up not, unless you have 10 people in your family, isn't out of line with what some other places will cost you. So, but anyway, we can look at that if that's a big thing. I think that's pretty rare thing,
Yeah.
but I like the idea of getting a support thing, and if there are issues, being able to have that and having Park and Rec involved is fine. Okay.
Thank you. That's all.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. Anything else?
I'd
Any
like to ask
questions?
a-
Richard Schlesinger.
Yeah, can I just
Okay.
quickly, I was just interested in the beach thing when you were talking earlier about hiring folks. How difficult would it be? And I mean, does anybody think it's a good idea to put sort of a means test on the people who are applying for the kids who are applying for those jobs, so that maybe we could throw some help to some of the less fortunate folks in town? Because I mean, those are nice jobs for the summer, and kids need jobs for the summer. And I don't know. I mean, is that something we could do?
We could do at this point. We haven't had a surplus of people, and I think generally we use most people that apply. I think that gets to be a little tricky, and I'd rather have it sort of be merit-based than means-based at this point. And I think we did raise the hourly rate, I believe, last year to be competitive. So it's a good amount of
It just strikes me
amount.
that there are a lot of kids in town who probably could use the jobs more than other kids. It's hard to do.
Yeah, I think that may be a little bit beyond our scope of practice at this point.
Just thought I'd ask.
It's a good thought. Be thinking about it, but at this point, not sure we're there.
Never mind.
It's all right. It's a good thought. Any other comments, questions from the public, press?
I'd like to ask a question about the West Cornwall Library building, the physical building down there. What's going to happen with that?
I don't know what's going to happen with that. I think you'd have to ask the library itself.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm not aware of any permits being filed with the town. I mean, I haven't heard any change. Last I heard was that was also one of the places that would potentially spring to life if we got a septic hooked up to it. But it's tough because that was the genesis of the whole West Cornwall wastewater thing. It took us a long time to get any toilets down there, and the property lines close, the well lines close. So it's in a tough situation until that pipe gets laid. Don't know, but I mean, I would ask somebody that's involved with the library what the plans for the old building are. Certainly, it's a very important building. I think it's the oldest public continuously used public building in town. More dog barks.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Hi, I do have a couple.
Yeah, hi, Riley.
First, just a point of clarity, which are the 3 streets that are going to be paved first, the ones that were approved tonight?
We're actually sealing them with
Okay, sorry.
chip seal, which is stone seal, so it's not a pavement, but it's the north part of Town Street, the last mile of Town Street, north of Yelping Hill Road, Yelping Hill Road itself, and Scoville Road between Town Street and Cream Hill.
Thank you. For the TRIPS grants, can I request a copy of the drawings that Steve drafted?
Yes. Jane will make sure you get one.
Thank you very much. And then on spraying, it's great that you got to speak with their lawyer. I'm glad to hear that somebody has responded from the railroad. But after speaking with them, he said that the state does not have much control over their regulations. Will your focus shift in your discussion with the railroads? Because I know you mentioned other things like you're looking into railroad safety and sort of drifting away from spraying. Are you still focused on spraying, or are you looking at other discussions with the railroad?
I think certainly spraying is one of the top issues, but it's not the only issue out there. And again, trying to create a dialogue as opposed to passing conversations, I think is good. And, you know, I'm fully aware of the fact that the railroad bed is owned by the state of Connecticut. So it's sort of like, you know, come on, folks, there's, I mean, the state of Connecticut owns the rail bed. So there has, you know, I get what he's saying, but I also sort of, from a common sense perspective, knows there is some oversight there, and there is something the state can do to, if there are infractions or if there are concerns. And certainly our state representatives have been participating in this discussion and want to, and they have passed legislation, and there's legislation that's being examined compared to what's going on in Massachusetts. So, you know, Massachusetts can pass legislation, so can Connecticut, is my thought, but I'm not an expert. But anyway, I was just glad that we, you know, again, I'm all in favor of dialogue, even if we don't all agree on everything. It's much better to get people talking to each other as opposed to at each other and not talking or responding. So I'm encouraged by that.
Me too. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other comments?
I have a
One thing-
question about the railroad spraying too, because the state has to be in compliance with the federal government. They're like the overseer of everything. Is that not correct?
Yes, but the federal government itself can have competing interests, as does the state. I mean, this, and we don't always agree with everything, but I know
Yeah.
also DOT may not agree with everything that happens in DEP, and I can well believe that the municipalities were cut out of the decision-making processes concerning railroads a very long time ago. But it doesn't mean we can't ask questions. And again, especially if the state owns the rail bed, even though they lease it, you know, it gets complicated fairly quickly. So one other thing, as Michelle mentioned, April Fools, one thing I did like to mention to people is to reassure them that despite what you read in the newspaper, the town of Sharon is not going to take over the covered bridge. That was April Fools. And in fact, we have had numerous requests from people living on the Sharon side of the river, which we call the West Bank, to become part of Cornwall. So I've told them we can't go there because the town of Sharon would not agree to losing part of their town and in a large part of their tax base. As much as we like our neighbors in Sharon, we're pretty content to keep the boundary where it is. No annexations are foreseen, and that we are very glad that the state of Connecticut owns and will continue to repair and maintain the covered bridge, as opposed to the towns of Sharon and Cornwall, which used to share that responsibility. It is pretty significant cost to their taxpayers. So anyway, good work on whoever wrote that little piece, and happy April Fools, everyone. And if there are no more questions, we'll stay in touch. A lot going on. Thank you all for attending, and we'll see you soon. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you so much, James.
You're so welcome.